question is, are you ready?
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let me talk to you.
Throwdown Nation, we are live. We are rolling on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter /X, Facebook, and TikTok. It is episode 96 of the Throwdown. And tonight we are throwing down with pro wrestler and educator, the prestigious professor and the Amazon, Amanda Fuentes. How
Hi.
you doing tonight, Amanda?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. And, you know, for those of you that are watching this live, if you have questions or comments, just throw them in the chat and we'll either handle them as we go or do a little Q&A at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first and most obvious question, and that is, how long have you been wrestling?
Oh, wow. It will be 6 years this upcoming October.
Wow.
Yes.
So you've been in the business for a minute.
I've been in it for a while, not as long as compared to my colleagues, but yeah, I've been in it for a while. I essentially started later in life, but that's okay. Better late than never, as they say.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you can always just say you pulled a Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, definitely.
So who actually trained you?
So I am formally trained by the Dudleys. I originally, when I started out in Staten Island, and then I had relocated to Florida about 5 years ago. So I found a school in Central Florida, and I got involved in that. And you know, I was taught what I needed to know, and I took off from there essentially.
Gotcha. How was it training with the Dudleys?
Very intense.
Sure.
It's definitely not for the weak-minded. You know, you're definitely going to be tested mentally in terms of if you are physically equipped to handle it. And there were days where I would cry. There were days where I would walk out because I'm like, I don't know if I'm fit for this. You know, I don't know if I could pull it off. But as time went on, things did get a little easier, even though the training got tougher in terms of being able to handle it. And ultimately, it's just something that you just know you have to get through, and you eventually get through it.
Absolutely. So in terms of the early portions of your training, what would you say was the most challenging aspect of professional wrestling for you to wrap your mind and body around?
Getting out of my head. It is the biggest weakness of mine, I would say, in terms of overthinking, overanalyzing, wondering of what my capabilities are and aren't, knowing my limitations. And I was just, in a lot of ways, I'm too much in my head. And even now that I have a lot more experience, I tend to overthink in certain elements. I guess it's the fact of not being confident enough to get through it, but not feeling that confidence within myself, knowing that I can do it and that I am capable of doing it, and trusting myself more than anything else. It definitely has mentally has put a dent in me in terms of just being confident within myself and trusting that I know what I'm doing, and that I can carry it out and perform well.
Gotcha. Well, something that we do during these that I didn't have an opportunity to tell you about before we went live
Mhm.
is we do something called the speed round game. And
Okay.
what that is, I've got a list of 10 names, and periodically I'll stop, I'll say speed round, and I'll name a name, and you just tell me the first things that pop into your head. It's basically just name association. It's just kind of fun.
Okay.
So, speed round, Mike Bailey.
Oh God, nothing comes to mind with him. I'm sorry.
Oh, no biggie. No biggie. Uh, he's actually supposedly going to be making his AEW debut tonight.
Oh wow, wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Yeah, it's always nice to see people that, whether you've worked with them directly or indirectly, to just see them shine, and you take into account all the hard work that it takes going into this business. And I don't follow AEW too much, to be quite honest with you, but I once in a while I'll turn on the TV and I'll study to see what's going on. But it's always nice to see people, get their flowers, and knowing that what they've had to do to get to that level is quite impressive, and of course very honorable for them. So it's always a nice thing to see people go from the indies to make it to that level.
oh for sure. So, and this is actually kind of a new question. This was actually given to me by a recent guest. I had this past weekend. I had a Ukrainian pro wrestler who is currently living in Spain on the show,
Wow.
and yeah, it was really kind of a neat thing. Technology is just so cool to be able to have a live stream with somebody on the other side of the world
Absolutely.
seamlessly.
Yeah.
But so he brought up the point, try to summarize your wrestling persona in 5 words.
Authoritative, outspoken, leader, force to be reckoned with. What was that, 3 or 4? I think I have one more. And then persistent.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
Thank you.
So I'm presuming that you've been a fan of this stuff the majority of your life. Is that accurate, or?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up during the days of the Attitude Era. So, watching the Dudleys, watching the Hardys, China, who's my absolute favorite. I love her. And it was something that I kind of had to, as a kid, beg my mom to watch, because she just wasn't a fan of it. And Attitude Era, as you know, it was very, it was
Yeah.
intensified and required supervision, especially if you're a kid. But it was, I just love the theatrics of it, I guess, if you want to put it that way, in its art form. And I remember SmackDown being on Thursdays, and I would watch it, and I would study it as best as I could. Had no clue at the time what anything meant or what any relevance it was, until I actually got into wrestling.
Right.
So my history with wrestling, in terms of knowing about it and watching it, stems back to when I was a kid. But in terms of wanting to do this, it didn't uh, sneak upon me, if you will, until much later in life, until I was well into adulthood.
Got you. So, what would you say is your earliest wrestling related memory?
Oh man, my earliest or my most memorable?
Um, Either one. I mean,
I guess my most memorable for me is when I had the privilege to wrestle in Japan. It was something that when I got into the business, I had dreamt of doing. I just love everything about the country, and I'm just
mhm.
fascinated by what it has and the history. And I'm big with history, so the history and the culture behind it, and it is different compared to how we do things here. So for me, that was a huge step and breakthrough in my career that I would say that is pretty memorable for me that I can always take away from everything.
Absolutely. And Japan is sort of the for a lot of indie wrestlers, Japan is almost their end goal. you know,
Yeah.
um, and and a lot of wrestlers say, if you can make it to Japan on any level, you've made it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it definitely took a lot of time and effort and a lot of hard work because it's not an overnight instant thing that happens, especially when it comes to planning and preparing. But it's definitely worth it once it actually comes to fruition and it actually happens.
absolutely. So, we were talking a little bit before we went live. So, in addition to being a pro wrestler, you are also an educator. You are a 12th grade history teacher.
Yes.
And I find that fascinating because my undergraduate degree is in history.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm a huge history buff myself. Um, but so have any of your students ever come to see you wrestle?
They have never seen me wrestle in person, but I'll tell you a funny story. So last year I was in class with the kids and I was writing some stuff on the board and I was getting ready, to start the lesson. So I usually take a few minutes before I get going and doing what I have to do. So I at some point as I'm writing on the board, I hear bing, bang, boom, and all of this nonsense going on. And I'm like, what is it that I'm hearing? So the kids are like, you? I'm like, what do you mean me? And they're like, we're watching you. They found one of my matches on YouTube and they were watching it.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I got excited. Yeah, it was funny. Or I'll have kids, on my Instagram, former students of mine, and when you go into your story and you're like, who is this? Who are these people? And then you see that it's a kid that you taught. It just goes to show you that there's always someone watching no matter what, whether it's an adult, whether it's a kid or somebody, there's always someone watching you. So it's kind of like it's cool, but at the same time it's like, Jesus Christ, these kids truly watch everything that I do, and they watch everything that you do. So I found that to be pretty funny when that happened in that moment, and I was like, okay, time to mute the YouTube and make everything unlisted now. But we got a good laugh out of that, so it was pretty comical.
No doubt, no doubt. So, it's an interesting mix of two distinct careers. And the question I've got, and this question goes both ways. Has being a wrestler made you in any way a better educator? And has being an educator in any way made you a better wrestler?
So over the years, I mean, I've been teaching for 16 years. So
Hmm.
as a teacher, my job is to teach and educate kids. And the takeaway is hoping that they've learned something from what you have taught. It ties into what I've learned with wrestling in that regardless of how much of an expert you may be in a specific profession, sorry, there's always room to grow. There's always room to learn. You never stop learning. And wrestling really taught me that because the behind the scenes of wrestling and the actual training and going through the process, I knew nothing about it. Again, coming from a fan's perspective, I just saw it as a form of entertainment, which it definitely is and was for me as a kid. But now that I've gotten to experience the other side of it, it definitely is a huge learning experience. And you're always going to find ways to try to improve your craft, try to get better on things that you feel you are weak in. And that's the thing. It's about being open-minded in that regard. And it's important for me, even as a teacher, to realize that I may be an expert in one field, but I'm not necessarily an expert in everything. And I'm not. History is my area of expertise, and that's what I know, and that's what I've taught all these years. But when you look at the art form of what it takes to be a wrestler, it's definitely a totally different learning curve at that.
No doubt. Speed round. Seth Rollins.
Burn It Down, which is his, part of his entrance music.
Yeah. Yep. So, away from wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies and interests? What do you like to do?
I love to travel. It is therapeutic for me. I have so many places on my bucket list that I desire to visit, and I am gradually getting there little by little. Shopping is definitely my thing, retail therapy. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Spending time with my daughter, and spending time with family. Family is a big part of my life and very important to me. So, my schedule is so complex and busy, but I always make time for my family, and I do the best that I can to be around them. But I'm pretty much open to anything, like I don't mind, trying new things, bar hopping, things like that. Those days for me are done. I'm older. I'm not knocking people that still do that. It's not my forte. And, so those are some of I love baseball because baseball season is now kicking back up. So I'm a Met fan and, I love watching baseball and sports in general. As swimming, the Olympics, all that. I could watch that as the day is long.
Gotcha. Well, also outside of wrestling, what person inspires you the most and why?
Could it be? Does it necessarily have to be someone that I know?
No.
Oh, I guess that's hard for me to answer because, over the years, I've had a lot of people come into my life that genuinely have my best interest at heart, and they done nothing but want to see me flourish and succeed. So I can't specify one particular person as to who has influenced me to be as great as I can be, but just to keep going and just to have that flow. I'm grateful to have such a huge support system from personal friends of mine to family to coaches, and it never stops. And it's a huge blessing for me to have these people in my life to help me to get to where I have gotten to at this point, and to help me to continue to get to where I need to be. And once the door has been open, the possibilities are endless, and it's just getting to the door to knock on it for it to open. And it takes time, and it can be very frustrating, but it takes time, and it's all about persistence. Like anything else, you got to keep going.
Gotcha. So you were mentioning also that you're based in Central Florida, but you sort of split time between Florida and New York. Interestingly enough, as a kid, I lived for about 7 years in the Cocoa Beach, Melbourne area. So I've spent time in Central Florida as well, and it was a great place to be as a kid.
Yeah. So. It's definitely an adjustment, coming from city life down here. It's more suburban. It's more lax, slower pace compared to the city.
Right.
It definitely has been. It's unless you're raised in that environment, it's when you move to locations like this at an older age, it's a huge adjustment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say is your favorite thing about Central Florida?
I'm a beach person. So that's
Hmm.
the beauty about it. Anything that has water, you know, you'll find me in it, whether it's a beach or pool or water park, I'll be in it. I was a swimmer my whole life. I swam all the way through high school, you know, until I graduated high school. And I love the water. Water is considered to be my element. And I love the beach. I love exploring different parts of Florida that have different beaches that I have not experienced yet. So it's, yeah, I'm a beach goer all the way, 100%.
Gotcha. So, they say that the best wrestling persona is usually pretty much yourself turned up to 11. So, tell us about in ring Amanda and kind of compare and contrast her with everyday you.
In ring Amanda, in my opinion, is uh, more, I guess, reserved than real life Amanda. I'm reserved in real life within reason, but when I get comfortable with someone or in an environment, that's when I tend to open up. So for me, it's about comfort. I am comfortable in my own skin. It's obviously it's it can get a little nerve wracking when you are in a new environment. For example, a new promotion, a new ring, a new school to train, whatever it may be, and it's once again it's being confident within yourself and within your abilities.
So, tell us about your very first match. What was it like? How did it go? What were your thoughts going into it, thoughts coming out of it, all that good stuff?
So my very first match that I had officially was like it was like three and a half years ago or something like that. And it was a triple threat. And I had never done a triple threat before, but it had to happen because of the layout. And if I remember correctly, one of the talents, had to cancel at the last minute. And that's what it molded into. It was a triple threat. So when it's your first match, like official match, that's normally not something you want to be thrown into at that moment, because then it's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But you have to make it work, and you have to just sort of go with the flow, and whatever will be, will be. And you just have to apply yourself in knowing that, okay, you're trained, you went through training, and you're going to do the best that you can. And that's ultimately what matters. But yeah, to be thrown into a triple threat your very first match is not that's tough for anybody just getting going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, we've heard about the first match. Now, tell us about your favorite match that you've been a part of.
Oh God. My favorite match that I've been a part of is I definitely loved when I had my match in Japan last year. That was a lot of fun. Very intense, but a lot of fun. I guess I'm gonna have to say my favorite match was probably against Kelly Madden. I have worked her several times, and she's just got this fire spark to her that makes working her enjoyable. And she kicked my butt, of course, but that's okay. And yeah, I would say it was a lot of fun working her, and it's she's great to work with. And yeah, off the top of my head, that's what comes to mind.
Gotcha. I know everybody has them. So, what is your biggest in ring pet peeve?
Oh, uh, smelly gear.
Yeah,
Smelly. I cannot stand
that's
it.
a common one. That's a common one.
Smelly
The-
gear and smelly knee pads. Like, it's after every match or show that I have, my gear goes right in the wash. My knee pads go right in the wash. And, I have multiple gears to choose from, yes, but for those that may not have those type of options, it's important. It doesn't matter what type of gear you have, just be neat and clean about it. Yeah, that's one of the biggest turnoffs for me. And the thing is that once I get a whiff of it, you can, and I don't intentionally do it to be rude, but you can legit see the facial expression that I'm turned off because the gear smells. Thankfully, uh, I haven't, some people that I have personally worked, I have not encountered that with them, but just training in general, even with training, wash your knee pads, bring extra shirts, change your clothes if you're overly saturated in sweat and things like that. It's to be considerate to the other person that you're in there with, in my opinion. It's you want the person to have a fun experience regardless of outcome. And when you're training, you're training for 4 or 5 hours at a time, 3 days a week. You're running, multiple spots and you're sweating profusely. The least that you could do is be considerate of the person that you're in there with. I get it. When you're doing a show, yes, you're going to sweat, but it makes it a lot easier if your gear is clean, and then it takes away from all of that. So it's just your body secreting sweat and nothing else. But when you have smelly gear, it can literally suck out your motivation to want to do this match. Like, I really don't feel like doing this right now because just for the fact that the person's gear smells. So for me, that's my biggest pet peeve.
I completely get it. For a number of years, several years ago, I trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And there was always this one guy that wouldn't wash his gi. and it was just, yeah. Not good.
Nope.
Good. So, if you could only be one, would you rather be great in the ring or great on the mic?
Great on the mic. Because being able to give a good promo sets the tone for how the story is going to continue or begin or end. And you could be another wrestler's mouthpiece if you are good on the mic, whether it's being a manager or things of that nature. And, it's part of storytelling. So storytelling includes being vocal. What's strange is that for me, when I'm in the ring, connecting to the crowd is something that I continue to try to work with. But being better on the mic in terms of cutting a promo I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background.
Oh, that's fine.
Being good on the mic to me will supersede all of that. Yes, being good in the ring is just as important, obviously, right? That's what fans come to see. They come to see performance. They come to see, the high spots and everything, but they also come to see you telling a story. And the takeaway for me, if all else fails, is being good on the mic.
Absolutely. So, do you have a preference yourself between working heel or babyface?
I don't have a preference. I have been trained to be able to work both, or whatever the promoter needs me to work, I can work. But in my experience and in the matches that I have had over the course of the years, I predominantly work as a babyface. So that's what I've been accustomed to working. But if a promoter said, hey, we need you to be the heel, sure, not a problem. It's not a problem at all.
Gotcha. Speed round. Penta.
Cero miedo. Wow.
See.
Yeah. Zero fear. That's what it means. It means
Yeah.
zero fear. So that's what comes to mind. He's a great luchador, and he has zero fear, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love uh, finally seeing him in the WWE system and, finally working in that environment. I mean, he's doing amazing work. He
Yeah.
really is. And I'm just thrilled for him. That's
Yeah, definitely. It's been long overdue, and it finally happened for him. And it can only go up from here in that regard.
absolutely. So, in terms of your in ring work and your promos, who or what would you say are some of your influences?
In terms of cutting a good promo, oh gosh. Uh, I used to like I love Cody Rhodes when he's on the mic, especially
Hmm.
'cause he's like this big baby face. Um, I don't have a particular preference, but I like to hear everybody out, because the thing about promos is this: a lot of these promos, it's more impactful when it genuinely is real. Like when that wrestler's feelings are real towards that other wrestler that they perhaps may be facing. That's when you can truly like connect with that's when you can truly connect with them and the crowd. So in my case, I listen to everybody. And I take notice that when it comes to cutting promos, that the best perception is listening to receive it to then respond. And if you pay attention to promos, even in the big leagues like WWE, for instance, they are cutting their promos where whoever is talking, the person on the receiving end, is just listening and taking it all in. Like nobody's talking over each other, nobody's interrupting each other. And when they are done, then the person on the receiving end can give their rebuttal. So it's just as those are patterns and behaviors that I have picked up over the years in noticing when people do their promos in matches, because when you have too many voices going on, you can't process it, you can't absorb it or register it. So that's always the best approach when it comes to promos. Of course, if it's a situation where it leads to like a big throwdown fight or something like that, then that's different. But normally that truly is, the best approach, because even the biggest heels, they will listen and they will register to what the babyface is telling them.
Gotcha. So, do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan? A match that you can have watched it a million times and it just never really gets old, and there's always some new little nugget you can pull from it.
I truly love Bret Hart versus British Bulldog. I believe it was SummerSlam 92, if I remember correctly. I could watch that match on repeat over and over and never get bored of it. And what I love about it, it was great storytelling. And not only was it great storytelling, it wasn't nothing crazy. It wasn't nothing, insanely over the top, high flying, and all of this. It was just good wrestling. And I'm
Hmm.
over the years I have started also getting very much into the technical aspect of wrestling. And I've grown a fascination to it and wanting to be more technical in the ring, because not too many people are, and it's an art form that definitely has to be mastered, and that takes years to do. That's not something that, unless you're an absolute natural, that's not something that happens overnight. It definitely takes time to be proficient enough in it to be able to execute it the right way so that it looks good.
Gotcha. So, who would, and this can be present day or past, who would be a dream opponent? Who would you absolutely love to have the chance to share the ring with?
Oh God, I guess I would have to go back into my past, and if she was still around, I would love to get into the ring with China. I just loved everything about her appearance, you know, how she worked, being that alpha female that she was. And yeah, I just, if I had the chance, her 100%.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You know, somebody else who has recently arrived in WWE that I'm really excited for is Jordan Grace. I mean, you know, she's smaller, but she reminds me of China just with her build
Right.
and such. And I'm dying to see Jordan Grace work a program with Rhea Ripley.
Yeah,
I
that
think those two could tear the house down.
100%. She's definitely unique. She's definitely amazing at what she does. And yeah, that would be one epic matchup for sure between her and Rhea. 100%.
Yeah. Yep. So, what is your favorite move? What is something a move that you just really enjoy doing? And on the flip side of that, is there a move that you either won't do or you would rather not do? And that can be giving or receiving.
So my finisher is pretty simple. It's like a rock bottom variation.
Hmm.
Basically, you have your opponent in a crossbody position, and you swing their legs around, and they take a flat back bump.
Hmm.
That's my finishing move. In terms of me taking, I am not a fan of taking pile drivers. Anything where the neck is exposed is a little worrisome for me, just because you know, neck injuries and things like that. But you also have to be comfortable in being able to take things like that. And you know, obviously this goes for anyone. You should never take something that you're just not comfortable with, regardless of experience. You know, obviously do what you are comfortable doing, because the objective is to obviously keep you and your opponent safe so that nobody gets
Right.
hurt. And that's the main thing. I'll take a tombstone gladly. That's, you know, no issue for me. But
Yeah.
pile drivers are a little iffy for me. I rather stay away from it.
Yeah. You know, I've said this on a number of these, but as a fan, a move that that always gives me the shivers when I see it being set up for is the vertebreaker.
Yeah.
I mean, that move just looks like there are just so many ways that it could just go catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
And thankfully, you don't see it much these days.
Right.
And there's a good reason for that, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you know, just extrapolating on what you were just saying, I think also what you will and won't do probably also depends on the person you're working with, as to whether they're a known quantity, you know, they work safely and that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
100%. I mean, it's you know, when you're in there with your opponent, especially if it's someone that you have never worked before, it can be, you're trusting that they know what they're doing. You know,
right,
you're trusting under the assumption that they are trained and that they can execute moves safely without hurting you or even themselves, perhaps. You know, it takes a lot of trust in your opponent. And if it's something that, you know, for example, it's I am considered, I mean, sure, there are female wrestlers that are 6 feet, but I'm decently tall, if you want to put it that way. You know, with boots on, I measure up at 5'9", 5'10". So if there's someone in there that is substantially smaller than me, um, you know, unless they have executed a move on people of that are similar in size to me, we may change it up. And you know, it's, the thing is that it's okay to tell your opponent I'm not comfortable taking this. You have to be vocal about that because you are 100% responsible the second you take a person off their feet.
Yep.
That is the main thing that I feel that some people tend to forget. The second you take a person off their feet, you are responsible for their safety. And if things go south, it falls on you. It's not on them. At the same token, it is also important for the person on the receiving end to not be afraid to say, I've never taken that before. I think we need to do something else. Because if they don't take it correctly, they can get hurt. And once again, it will.
Yep. And, you know, and it really comes down to not letting your pride get in the way and being self-aware, you know,
Absolutely.
knowing your own limitations and being willing to vocalize those limitations.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've been doing this long enough that I'm sure this applies. What hurts right now? or should I ask what doesn't hurt?
What doesn't hurt? Oh God. I mean, you know, everything hurts. That's just the nature of it. My back is sore, you know, from the bumping. It will do that to you. I have been lucky enough though, where I knock on wood that it stays that way. I have been lucky enough that I have not sustained any true intense major injuries. You know, my back tends to get sore because again, the bumping will do that to you in the ring. Taking moves will do that to you in the ring, but no dislocated shoulders, no broken limbs, you know, no, my knees have gotten a little sore over time, but good quality knee pads will protect you from that. But yeah, it's part of it. It's part of it. So it's like, you know, most people on the indies, unless they are booked every single week, they're wrestling maybe once a month. But you know, when you think of people in the big major promotions, when they're on the road every single week, your body feels it. So it's all about recovery. It's all about recovery. I have gotten into a lot of hot yoga in recent months to help with the joints, and you get a sweat out of it, but it does genuinely help. It keeps the limbs loose. It keeps your body loose. It, you know, it helps for recovery. The main key is recovery. And I have learned the hard way to some degree that if you don't learn when to rest, your body will force you to rest. And that's something that you never really want to have to be like, well, crap, I have no choice but to sit out and not do anything right now because I'm all banged up. And I had to, I experienced that a few weeks ago. And, you know, I had to say, okay, not happy with it right now, but you know what? My body needs to rest, because if your body breaks down, now you can't do anything, you know?
Yep. So you mentioned, you know, no broken bones and that kind of thing, you know, knock on wood, that's great. But what is the most significant injury that you've suffered either wrestling or training?
The knee. So yeah, the knee, my left knee on and sometimes you can get a knee injury from doing the most basic thing. It doesn't even have to be nothing crazy. And I had a sprained MCL on someone giving me a wishbone, and it was in training, and it was a wishbone is nothing for me compared to the other stuff of what I've taken, right? So it's just you know, aging, the body being beat up. It's like, so any little thing, it's, you know, the knees are also super sensitive because it takes a lot of the blows of what you do in the ring, from running, hitting the ropes, from landing on your knees when it comes to hitting moves or taking moves, and the knees jumping, you know, all of those things. The knees absolutely take a beating. That's why it's so important When I first started wrestling, I hated knee pads. I didn't want them. I didn't care for them. I was like, this is in my way, and I just hated them. But because I am older, like I'm not 21, I was like, people were telling me, people that obviously had more experience than me, you need knee pads, you need knee pads, you need knee pads. So eventually I invested in knee pads, good quality knee pads. AMAs are the best in my opinion. And, I train with them. I wrestle matches in them because, yeah, you need to protect your knees, because without your knees, you can't do anything. You can't do much.
Yep. But I completely identify with what you're saying about, as you get older. I'm in my 50s, and let me tell you, your body starts doing weird things in the 50s. I mean, I have thrown my back out sneezing. I mean, just it's a weird time. It's a very weird time. But so what does your family think about the fact that you're a wrestler?
They think I'm nuts. They think I'm crazy. My daughter has probably been my biggest supporter with regards to wrestling. She hates it. She does not care for it at all. She's a swimmer. And she loves boxing. Like, those are her hobbies. But she will come with me to shows. She will help do my hair because she's good with that stuff, especially if I'm local. So in that regard, I'm grateful to my daughter for that, because she likes the wrestlers. In terms of the sport itself, she doesn't care for it. Like, she'll watch the pay-per-views with me, and sometimes when I'm calling the match as they're going through it from watching the pay-per-view, she'll be like, Ma, can you just shut up so we can watch the damn thing, please? Because I'm studying the match as I'm also being entertained by it,
Right.
So it's my family will ask me, where are you going this week, or things like that. So that's kind of like how they sort of show support, but they think I'm nuts from doing it. And but yeah, my dad is on board with it, my daughter, and my daughter is my biggest supporter in that, because like I said, whenever I can bring her with me on the road, I bring her. She has been with me to Louisiana. She has been with me, obviously, in the tri-state area and in Florida and in other places to wrestle. And like I said, and promoters are very open with it. They're very understanding. It's never been an issue. She's very well behaved anyway. She's 17, so. I would just give the promoter the heads up. Hey, is it cool if my daughter comes along? She's going to do my hair. And they're like, sure, not a problem. Things like that. So it's nice to bring her along with me. And I give her credit, because to stick around for hours on end all day on something that you don't care for, it takes a lot for that to be in a person to want to do that.
Yeah. Well, she loves her mom, and you've obviously raised her well.
Thank you.
So what is your take on the role that social media is playing as a promotional tool in wrestling, specifically indie wrestling?
Social media is obviously, in my opinion, can be a blessing and a curse. So social media can be a great way to interact with fans, to interact with promoters, to interact with other wrestlers, and Twitter wars that you see amongst wrestlers, and it's hard to tell if it's a shoot or if it's part of the story and things like that. I think that social media is important, because it's all about also promoting. You're promoting yourself, you're marketing yourself, you're also promoting the promotion that you are going to wrestle for. And it's it's all about spreading awareness, spreading the word for that promotion. So it's quite interesting. I think social media is great. But at the same time, I feel with regards to social media, some people don't know when to log off, when they need to log off,
Mhm.
and it can cost you. It can cost you. All it takes is one screenshot, and that's it. It's over.
Yep.
Yep. And then it's at that point it's too late. Back in the days, like in the 90s and 80s and even early 2000s, Facebook didn't start coming around to 2004, and ideally Facebook was only intended for college students to interact with each other and talk about
Right.
club meetings and things like that. So that's when I got on Facebook, because that was around the time that I started college. So now it's anybody, all access can join. So it's it definitely can be a great tool and great resource. But like I said, some people, when they don't know when to log off, it can, and that's a plain generalization for anybody, whether you're an athlete or not. It can cost you. Yeah, 100%.
For sure. So, knowing everything you know at this point in your life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
To my younger self, with regards to wrestling or things in general?
Just things in general and or wrestling, any of it.
Be patient with yourself. Let me see. Being patient with yourself is definite, especially when you're trying something new or trying to be good at something that you genuinely enjoy. Enjoy the ride. Literally, you have to enjoy the process. The process is not always going to be peaches and roses and rainbows. That's not reality, right? So you have to enjoy for what it is and what you can get out of it and have fun with it. When you start something that you're genuinely passionate about, you get frustrated when you feel like you're not progressing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there are people that are always watching you. There are people that are always looking out. And when you progress, they're going to take notice, even though you may not notice it. It's kind of like weight loss, right? When I started wrestling, I was overweight. I was big. I'm not going to deny it. I was 230 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to be able to move easier in the ring, I had to drop at least 40 of that, which I managed to do. And it is very hard, a lot of work. I'm talking about, crying because you're depriving yourself of food that you like to eat and you can't eat it because the carbs and this and that and everything else in between. And it takes a special discipline. It's all about a mindset. And you have to, it's a lot of willpower. It's not easy. So when it comes to things like that, especially weight loss, you have to be absolutely patient with yourself. All these things that we see on Instagram with all these influencers saying, oh, I did this in 3 months. I did that in 4 months. So that's not ideal. That's not reality.
Mm-mm.
They're guarantee you they're on all stuff, and I know people that have lost weight and it's taken them 3 years to lose the amount that they've wanted to lose, but they have lost it. So it's tough. It's tough, but that's what I would tell my younger self. Yeah, basically, or just for anybody in general, that's what I would tell them. Be patient with yourself. You have to be, because if not, you will go absolutely bonkers.
Yep. And, we can all be our own worst enemy in terms of expecting results too soon or just having unrealistic expectations.
Right.
So
not only that, we are also at times we tend to be our own worst enemy, and our own worst critic. We're so critical on ourselves that we're blindsided to realizing what we've actually accomplished and how far we have actually come. I think about, like, when I first forward to today, and it's been a rough journey. And the only thing that I could do is to keep going. And that's it. That's all you can do.
Yep. So Do you have any pre-show traditions? Any things that you try to do consistently before you go through the curtain?
Uh, I do my best to get a workout in before I go to a show. I usually try to get up in the morning on show day, and even if it's yoga, even if it's doing a yoga session for an hour, to get my mind right and to just, I'll listen to my gospel music. It relaxes me. It sets the
Hmm.
tone for me for the day, for the type of show that I'm going to have. And I just sort of like lock in and I tell myself, okay, I'm not going to worry about it right now. And I'm just going to, when I get there, then, I do what I have to do. And I'm just going to try to have a good time. And that's all you try to do. That's traditionally, that's how I do it for me. Everybody has their own little quirks and things that they do that works for them. But for me, that's usually how I try to do it, especially on a day that, I know I'm wrestling and I have a show. Uh, you know, it has worked for me. It genuinely calms me down because before I started doing that, I was always overworked. I was always freaking out. I was messaging people that had more experience than me in the ring saying, "Whoa, what do I do with this, that, and the other thing?" Trying to get advice and whatever. I still do that today, but I do it in a lot more relaxed approach. And in terms of I'll speak to someone that has more experience than me and I'll say, I want to incorporate this. Does this make sense? And these are
Hmm.
people that obviously have more years in than me. And they would tell me, sure, go for it. Or they'll say, in this instance, I wouldn't do that. Hold off, whatever. And I usually do everything in my power to try to adhere to their advice because these are people that I see as mentors that have guided me all of this time up to this point.
Gotcha. So, something that we've done in all of these that's just been kind of fun is we've let the current guest pose a question for the next guest. And my previous guest the other night, I had, I'm based here in Atlanta,
Mhm.
and we had another Atlanta-based guy who is a wrestling commentator down here. And I had mentioned to him that you were going to be the next guest, and he is also by ancestry and ethnicity, he is also Hispanic.
Oh, okay.
So the question that he posed is how do you feel that you are representing the Hispanic culture in wrestling? What has that experience been like for you?
I think it's an honor, to be a Hispanic woman, a Puerto Rican woman in this business. And I've wrestled in Puerto Rico 3 times. Obviously, it's a different style, but for me, it holds very dear to me, considering it's my cultural roots of my family. And
Hmm.
my aunts and uncles, they were all born and raised there. My mother was born in the States, but she lived there for several years before they came back. And for me, it's just you obviously need to embrace your culture. You need to know who the hell you are, and that's always important to know. I take great pride in my culture. I take great pride in being a Hispanic woman. And it's important for other Hispanic wrestlers to know the same thing. Don't be ashamed of your background. It doesn't matter if you're from South America, if you're from Puerto Rico, if you're from Mexico, it doesn't matter. Just be passionate and be proud of where you are from. There's my mother used to tell me a statement that said there's always a story behind someone's glory. So I take that with me, and it's something that you should be proud of. Obviously, we work in a business where there's a wide variety of cultures involved, and you always do your best to respect everyone's culture. But yeah, I take great pride in being a Hispanic woman because I feel in a lot of ways. And again, this doesn't mean that I'm right. This is just going based off of my personal experience. I feel in a lot of ways we are heavily undervalued. And
Hmm.
in opportunities like this that you have with wrestling, you have the chance to prove to people to know just how valuable you actually are.
I love that quote from your mom. There's always a story behind the glory. That is really cool. Your mom sounds like a neat lady. Um,
She was a neat lady. My mom passed away 6 years ago, but she used to always tell me these things, and because I was the type that I always tried to rush everything, and that's something that took me many, many years to be able to understand in terms of being patient. I wanted things yesterday, and it just
mhm,
wasn't happening for me. And she would always tell me, you can't live this way because you're just going to drive yourself to the point of insanity. And she was right. So when it came to talking about success of people, whether it was people that she worked with, whether it was people that she personally knew, she would always tell me that there's always a story behind someone's glory. You don't know what that person had to do to get to that point in their life of where they are. And just because they are where they are, that doesn't mean they had a free ride. That doesn't mean it was easy for them. For the majority of people, it takes a lot of work to be at a certain level of where you want to be. And
mhm.
I was a negative Nancy, if for a lack of a more different term. I had no positive outlook on anything. I was just horribly negative about everything. I always thought the worst case scenario and what happens with this and that. And it's stressful. So when she passed away, I had to change my mindset, and I had to understand and realize I cannot go crazy over things that I cannot control. I can only control what is in front of me right now and how I can handle it. And again, it's all about mindset, and it's all about putting things into existence. Like if you feel you're not going to pass that test, oh, I'm not passing this. Well, guess what? You're not passing it,
Yep.
because you've already put it out there, that negativity that you're not going to pass it. But if you put it out there that I think if I study hard, I will do okay, then you know what? You'll be confident, you'll be more relaxed, and you probably will do okay.
Yep. Yep. And that's one of many reasons why I have so enjoyed doing these live streams and focusing on the indies, because being a small part of telling the story of people chasing a dream is has just been such an honor. I mean, I just get such a charge out of these, and I can't believe I'm on the verge of having done 100 of these. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just it's completely just a labor of love. I mean,
yeah,
I love this stuff, and I've been a fan since I was 11, and I'm 55 now. So and finally being a small part of a business I've loved for 40 years, it's just the coolest thing in the world.
yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Since this is part of a series, do you have a question that you would like to pose to the next guest?
If I had to propose a question, I guess my question would be is if you could do something else in the wrestling business besides wrestling, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. How
Mhm.
would you answer that?
So I was trained to learn how to do everything
Hmm.
because you don't know what opportunity might knock on your door. You have
Exactly.
to be willing and open to try everything. Sure, the ideal goal is to be a wrestler,
Hmm.
but I was told you have to have your bags already packed at the door waiting, because as much as you may want to be a wrestler, if you get that knock for opportunity for something else, you would be foolish to turn it down because these things are only once in a lifetime.
Yep.
and you have to take it for what it is. You have to see it as a blessing. You've come this far. The
Yep.
foot is in the door.
Yep.
Use it.
And one opportunity leads to another, and you never know where it'll take you.
Right.
So,
and I personally feel that promoters and in the business in general, they look for people that obviously that are coachable, but they look for people that are open to trying other things. Because if they don't have something for you in that one particular thing that you may want, but you're willing to try ring announcing, color commentary, things like that.
yep.
It's an open door, and you have to see it as, well, they could have given it to someone else, but they asked you. So if they asked you, take it while you can,
Absolutely.
because if not, it's going to go to someone else. That's just how it is.
Yep. So we're pretty much at the end of things now. So do you have any upcoming shows or anything at all that you'd like to give some hype to?
As of right now, I'm supposed to be going back to Louisiana in May to wrestle.
Okay.
And then I'm supposed to also be going back to Japan mid-June. And in August again, I will be in mid-June to July. I'm supposed to be wrestling for Ice Ribbon, which is an all-women's promotion in Japan. It's based out of a little past Tokyo. So I love everything about that country. So I can't wait to get back there to, I had such a great experience in that regard that I'm excited to go back for sure.
Awesome. Maybe when you get back from the Japan trip in the summer, maybe I can get you back on here and you can break your trip down for us.
Yeah,
Would you be up for that?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Well, as far as what we've got going here, tomorrow, the 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern, I've got episode 97 with a fellow pro wrestling podcaster, Justin from the ILW podcast. Then on Monday, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, at 8 p.m. Eastern, I've got episode 98 with an Atlanta-based wrestler, Jay Shaw. Tuesday, the 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern, I've got episode 99 with a wrestler based out of Ontario, Canada, Bad Nanny. So that's, those are the next three. I've got a bunch more scheduled. So, definitely keep an eye on my socials because I announce new stuff all the time. And for those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be seeing this on replays, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, do the old like, comment, share, and subscribe. And before we wrap this up, do you have any final words you'd like to say to the audience?
Go for what your heart desires and be persistent and consistent. It's not about how fast you go. It's about being consistent and keep going.
Absolutely. Amanda, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
So thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
And like I said, I'll be back tomorrow night with Justin from the ILW podcast. And in the meantime, love each other.